Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me on Caregiver Solutions Info. I'm so glad that you've joined us. This program is just for you, the family caregiver. If you're caring for someone with dementia, some memory loss, Alzheimer's disease, and you are at a loss of where you're going, what you're doing, and want to be prepared for what the future holds, then this show is just for you. This is where we give you the information and we bring excellent advice and different techniques and tips to you so to hopefully make your caregiving journey a little bit better. So every week we are going to be talking about all things caregiving, whether it's from experts in the field of elder care, gerontologists, information from doctors, social workers. Doesn't matter what you're dealing with. You can learn from all these professionals, and you get the information right here without even leaving the comfort of your car if you're listening to us on the radio, or the comfort of your home if you're watching us live stream on caregiversolutions.info. However you're joining us, I'm glad that you are. We are live from Boca Raton, Florida, and we just went FM. So if you're used to hearing us on 1470 AM, you can turn your dial now to 95.3 FM and tell everybody about it. And we are coming to you live. And so thank you again for joining us. The first thing that I'd like to do is go to our local Caregiver Community Corner. And this is where we share information that's local here in the South Florida community. The first thing I'd like to say is that we appreciate feedback from all of our listeners. And if you hear something that you'd like to know more about, if there's something that you'd like for us to discuss on the program, or if you just like to make a comment, we would love to hear from you. And you can email me. And that email address is delray@arden-courts.com. Again, delray@arden, ARDEN, courts, COURTS.com. Send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. Our local community caregiver corner today involves a fundraiser for the Alzheimer's Community Care, which is a local nonprofit organization. And in the South County area, once a year, they hold a wonderful event. This year is going to be at the St. Andrews Country Club on Thursday, December 1st. And it's going to be a theme of Wizard of Oz. The theme, of course, is there's no place like home. And we know that people that have dementia and caregivers want to keep their loved one at home as long as possible. And so this is a wonderful event. It's open to the general public. And we encourage you to come because there's going to be lots of resources there for caregivers, a lot of professionals that will have exhibit booths and people that can help you through your caregiving process. And then you can also join other caregivers and other professionals who understand what you're going through. Now, this is a luncheon, a fashion show, and a silent auction. And if you'd like to get a ticket to attend, they'd be very happy to get you one to you. And all you have to do is either give them a call or you can actually visit their website and purchase a ticket online. So if you want to visit online, the website is alzcare.org/events. Again, ALZCare, that's ALZCARE.org/events, and you can find the December 1st Alzheimer's Community Care Luncheon there. You can also give them a call at 561-683-2700 and get more information about that. Now, last week we announced on Caregiver Corner about a wonderful event that was happening actually today, and it was a special seminar located in West Palm Beach at the Arden Courts there, and it was presented by Dr. Tam Cummings. Dr. Tam Cummings is a gerontologist. She's excellent at dealing with dementia issues and educating caregivers on all things dementia. She's a wonderful speaker. She speaks from the heart. She speaks from her head. And together, it lends itself to learning in a fun, enjoyable way, although she's, really tough when it comes to getting the information out to caregivers, because this is something that really shouldn't be sugar-coated. It is what it is, although, you want to learn in a way that is something that you can swallow, because Alzheimer's is really hard to swallow, and getting that diagnosis of your loved one is a really tough pill to swallow. And Dr. Tam Cummings makes it a little bit easier, because when you understand what you need the medicine for and what it can do for you, then that pill is a little bit easier to swallow. So I know a lot of you, especially those that aren't in the local area, were not able to attend today. It was a wonderful seminar, and we really enjoyed Dr. Tam Cummings coming from all the way from Texas just to present this wonderful seminar to us. As a matter of fact, she has a book out. It's called Untangling Alzheimer's, and this is a guide for families and professionals, a conversation in caregiving. And Dr. Cummings has this book available at her seminars. You can also probably get it online, and you can actually get a copy of this book via the compliments of Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts is our national sponsor, and as such, they like to educate the caregiver in addition to caring for the person with the memory loss. And we believe that an educated caregiver is a better caregiver, because it's going to help you to learn how to deal with communication efforts, behavioral problems that might be occurring in your loved one, and just tips and information that you'll need along the way. It's also an excellent resource for caregivers to learn. And Arden Courts would like to offer a free book to you, the family caregiver. And if you'd like to receive this book, which we're going to be talking about today, doing a recap on what Dr. Cummings presented at the seminar. All you have to do in order to get this free book is to call the Arden Courts toll-free number. That number is 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410. I know a lot of caregivers who attended the seminar today wanted to get this book. We gave out some as door prizes. And if you're listening and you attended the seminar, this is another way to get this invaluable book, because you'll want to read it from front to back to learn all the things that Dr. Cummings has to say. So as she is on her way back to Texas tonight, I'm going to be recapping a lot of what Dr. Cummings said at the seminar. And we're going to hit a lot of the highlights, because it's very, very important what she presented. And, even if you've heard some of this before, I think that caregivers can never hear it enough. Sometimes as a caregiver, we're so stressed out that we don't really hear what's being said. And I think repeating it and saying it in a different way at a different time, you just can't get enough of that. So what I'm going to be doing today is highlighting those presentations by Dr. Cummings and giving you an opportunity to get some of the wonderful tools that she actually gave out to the audience. And these are tools that you can use every day, every month, to learn more about not only the stress that you're under as a caregiver and when it's time to take better care of yourself, but also the different stages of dementia and what happens as we go along through the different stages of dementia. So that's what the show is going to be about today. I'm very excited that you've joined us. And when we come back from first commercial break, have a pen and pencil handy so you can take notes, because this is a wonderful educational opportunity for you and for me. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The bottom line is it was the absolute right.
Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who care for them. Keeping them safe and secure means never letting your guard down. And even though deep down you know it's time, it hurts to have to ask for help. But it could hurt them even more if you didn't. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know. We understand. We can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know. We understand. We can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
With us, we're going to be talking about untangling dementia, untangling Alzheimer's. Actually, the name of a book written by Dr. Tam Cummings is called Untangling Alzheimer's, a guide for families and for professionals, and untangling not only the myths, but untangling understanding what Alzheimer's is all about. And when Dr. Tam Cummings started her presentation today, she actually asked the audience, how many people here are caregivers? Most of them raised their hands. Some of them were professional caregivers, and some of them were professionals in other aspects of healthcare. Of the ones that were actual caregivers, Dr. Tam Cummings said, what kind of dementia does your loved one have? Sometimes they said, well, the doctor just said it was dementia. Others said, well, the doctor said it was Alzheimer's. Dr. Cummings said, well, anything else? And one person actually said, well, they said my dad was just getting senile. So this is very telling, because when you have a diagnosis, dementia is not a diagnosis. And as Dr. Cummings said, dementia is sort of like the umbrella term. So if I were to say to you, if I were the doctor, your mom has cancer, and, come back and see me in 6 months, would that be acceptable to you? No, it wouldn't. What would be the first thing that you would want to ask the doctor? Obviously, well, doctor, what kind of cancer does my mother have? And how do we treat it? And why wait 6 months? And who are the specialists that you're going to send me to? So Dr. Cummings says, when the doctor tells you that your loved one has memory loss or dementia, you need to replace that word with cancer, and that will actually trick you into saying, what kind of dementia? Why do I have to come back in 6 months? Why not earlier? What kind of medicine are we going to be doing for this? What kind of specialist do I need to go see? And what's my prognosis? A lot of people take that word dementia And it doesn't really tell the whole story. As a matter of fact, you have to find out what type of dementia your loved one has so that you know what to expect and how to treat it. So if we were talking about cancer, and cancer is an overview term, the first thing is, what kind of cancer? Is it skin cancer? And if it is skin cancer, what kind of skin cancer is it? Is it melanoma? Is it basal cell? What kind? If it's cancer and it's lung cancer, well, what kind? What is it caused by? What do I do about it? This is very important because when you're talking about dementia as an umbrella term, there are so many different dementia types under that umbrella that you need to understand what's causing the dementia. Dementia is just the terminology for behaviors and for signs and symptoms that go along with the memory loss. The most common type of dementia is actually Alzheimer's disease type. Now, even that has different kinds of Alzheimer's. As Dr. Cummings explained, did the doctor say that your mother just had Alzheimer's? Or did the doctor go a step further and say, gee, I think it's early onset Alzheimer's, I think it's normal aging Alzheimer's, I think it's late stage Alzheimer's? These are things that are important for you as a caregiver to know because there are different behaviors and different things to expect within each different stage of Alzheimer's disease. Now, Dr. Cummings has broken down the disease and the behaviors into 7 stages, and it's important to know that the 7 stages of Alzheimer's basically explains what to expect as the disease progresses. It's not the same as when someone may say, well, my mom has early onset Alzheimer's. Early onset is not a stage. It's an actually type of Alzheimer's that actually starts much, much earlier in someone's age. We're talking about maybe in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And yes, people can actually get true Alzheimer's disease at that young age. And that's an early age onset dementia, which is the Alzheimer's type. Now, that is very unusual. We don't see it that much, but we certainly do see it. A lot of times when a family has had Alzheimer's in their family and people have died from Alzheimer's, their grandparents or great-grandparents and aunts and uncles, that is what they call a familial type of Alzheimer's. And that is something that can run in families. However, just because someone in your family has Alzheimer's, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get it. And one of the reasons is what we don't know is what actually causes Alzheimer's. And so it's very, very important to get a proper diagnosis because with a proper diagnosis, you know which path you should go down as far as treatment, as far as learning about the disease and what to expect. And so when you're dealing with dementia, you have Alzheimer's disease, you have vascular dementia. Now, vascular dementia is basically what it sounds like. It's your vascular system is not working properly where you're going to have problems that are going to cause your brain maybe to be affected because of a stroke, because of a heart attack or a stroke. You've probably heard of TIAs. Those are like mini strokes. And one way to help prevent this is to take care of our vascular system. There's a big push these days to prevent Alzheimer's, possibly by taking better care of ourselves. And so right now we have no cure. We don't have really a way to stop it, although there are some medications that can slow it down. So one of the best things we can all do is try to prevent the disease from happening. And the doctors will tell you, you need to exercise at least an hour a day of good physical exercise. You need to exercise your brain. You need to get adequate sleep. You need to get on a good diet, like a Mediterranean diet, or diets that reduce trans fat and that include good omega-3s and lots of fruits and vegetables. You need to exercise your brain by learning new activities. These are things that we can do to try to prevent getting the dementia either from a vascular point of view or from an Alzheimer's point of view. So it's very important to understand the different types. And in Dr. Cummings' book, she explains these different types of dementia. And basically today we're going to be talking about Alzheimer's disease. So once you know that you have a proper diagnosis because you've gotten to the proper doctors and you've done all the tests, then you can start looking at the progress of it and what you need to do at each stage. So we're going to do some highlights here of the program that Dr. Tam Cummings gave this today, actually, in West Palm Beach. Now, one of the things is stage 1, and there's something called normal aging. We've all experienced probably at some point in our lives some memory loss. Where did I put my keys? I know I had them a minute ago. Where did I lay them down? Where did I park my car? I went to the grocery store. I came back. I can't remember where I parked my car. Gee, I've known this person for a long time. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember the name. Or, yeah, you know that actor? I'm trying to tell you the name of this actor, and I see his face in my head. I just can't retrieve the name. Eventually, if you find your keys, you remember where you parked your car, you remember your friend's name, and all of a sudden you wake up in the middle of the night and you remember that you're talking about Matthew McConaughey, then you're probably got mild, you probably have normal aging. And this is where basically this kind of forgetfulness is short-term only because you are probably tired. You're not focused or you're stressed out. And caregivers, believe me, they are stressed out all the time, even when they don't think they are. Just the fact that they are a family caregiver will stress you out. So don't think that some of these things that you're forgetting and you're worried that you have it, a lot of it is because you're not focused, you're not getting the proper sleep, or maybe you're just too stressed out. So we're talking about now more than just this. We're talking about what happens when it goes beyond that. Now, the first stage that is on this tool, and it's called the Dementia Behavioral Assessment Tool. And this is a tool that gerontologist Tam Cummings has provided to the attendees. And in normal aging, there's no cognitive changes evident. Normal aging, normal brain function. And like I said, being the fact that you forget something, it's normal. But if it eventually comes back to you, you know pretty much you're okay until it happens to get into stage 2. Stage 2 is actually the early stage. Now, mild cognitive impairment. Mild cognitive impairment is like a precursor into full-blown dementia, but it doesn't have to be. And normal aging, we slow down. Our bodies slow down, our brains slow down. And with mild cognitive impairment, you're going to see a normal aging process so that if someone reaches the age of 85 or older, 50% of people age 85 or older are going to have some mild cognitive impairment that possibly could lead to a dementia. Now, in this stage, this is a minimal brain tissue loss, and it usually starts in ages 40 up to 60 years old. And the stage of this, which is stage 2, is really unknown how long this can last. And again, that's because some mild cognitive impairment stays right there. It doesn't get worse, but sometimes it does get worse and it crosses the line over into a dementia. And so I wanted to give you a few of the behavioral characteristics that are in early stage 2, fleeting moments of cognitive loss. You recover relatively quickly from mistakes. You may even correct yourself, all right? So you realize that you made a mistake, and, oh, that's not right, this is what's right. You misplace familiar objects. Again, year to year, where did I put the turkey baster as we're coming up on Thanksgiving? But you might misplace it, but then you're going to find it. You forget some names that you knew well. And again, these are very normal behavioral characteristics in early stage 2. You do not have any problems completing tasks or social functions, and you actually function relatively effectively at home and at work. In other words, your executive functioning at this stage is not effective. What is executive functioning? That's the ability to do certain tasks, to make judgments, to, for instance, balance your checkbook. But if you never balanced your checkbook before and you never knew how, don't think that you have an early stage, because it's something that you actually judge. If you did it before, can you still do it? If you never did it, you never did it. And that's sort of the joke that goes around. I never did it before. Why would I do it now? You want to take an orientation test, and you score well. So if you're concerned, there are tests that you can take. You can actually go to your neurologist, to a brain research center, and they'll do usually some free mini tests for you, some free screening, some free memory screening if you're concerned at all. So you want to go ahead and take that, and then you'll have a baseline, especially if Alzheimer's disease runs in your family. Then we're getting to stage 3, which is the beginning of dementia. This is minimal brain tissue loss, and the stage is thought to last 3 to 4 years. Now, in this stage, you have different behavioral characteristics, and I will just name a few of them, and this is, again, from the Dementia Behavioral Assessment Tool from Dr. Tam Cummings that she presented today at her seminar. And in stage 3, which they call the middle stages, this is memory deficit is evident in intensive interview. There's attempts to conceal the deficits, and people deny any cognitive difficulties. This is pretty evident sometimes when families get together. We're coming up on Thanksgiving this year, and a lot of families are going to be getting together, and maybe for the first time in a year, because maybe it's only yearly that families can all gather around the Thanksgiving table. And year after year, if you pay attention, especially in your older folks and your parents and your grandparents, you're going to be able to notice some slight changes. And when you realize that there are some changes, your parent or grandparent may be in denial themselves that there's any cognitive decline whatsoever. They would actually refute that and say there is nothing wrong with me, and they will actually try to what they call cover up and conceal the fact that something's wrong. And for instance, give you a quick little example. You're sitting around the Thanksgiving table, and all of a sudden your people are passing the mashed potatoes and the gravy, and where's the cranberry sauce? Well, guess what? Mom forgot to buy cranberry sauce. Who forgets to buy cranberry sauce? So instead of mom saying, oh my gosh, I forgot, how could I forget that? She's going to cover up, and she says, oh, that's too sweet anyway, and nobody ever eats it, so I just didn't bother this year. Now that's what we call covering up. And that's someone that doesn't want to admit or actually doesn't know that they have some memory deficits, and this is an attempt to conceal that deficit. Also in stage 3, which is the middle stage, there's going to be problems performing in demanding situations, like at work or in a social situation. So people that are working still, and this can happen to people, all through their adult life, and some people even work up until their 80s, but if they're having trouble at work, they're all of a sudden missing appointments, they're missing meetings, they're not following up or following through with their responsibilities at work, and they're just getting further and further behind. It may not be their load is really increased. It may be the fact that they have slower cognitive functioning and the beginning of dementia because they cannot remember to do these things. And so if you have coworkers that are experiencing some of these issues, that might be a telltale sign. A person in stage 3, middle stage, can get lost traveling to new areas. Now, we can all get lost, but we know how to either read a map or we know how to figure out where we're at. But somebody in the early stages can get lost not only traveling to new places, but they can get lost sometimes even traveling to familiar places that they've been traveling to for a long, long time. things all of a sudden don't look familiar to them. They have more name or word finding difficulty more frequently. So again, it goes back to the normal aging and the mild cognitive impairment, but when you get into the middle stages, it's actually becoming more frequent that you can't think of the word, that you can't think of a name. You're challenged to remember new names. You may appear depressed. You demonstrate a high social skill level. Now, in social skills, let's talk about that for a moment. When we're young, our parents teach us a lot of things, and one of them is social skills. So when someone says, hello, how are you? We're all taught to say, fine. And that is a standard answer. And most of us say fine because we really don't want to get into the nitty-gritty about all of our aches and pains and ailments because most people, really don't want to hear it. And so we use that just as a general term, I'm fine. Now, when someone has dementia, they're going to use their social skills of things that they learned early on, and they're going to say everything's fine. And when a lot of adult children call their parents and they're talking over the phone from long distance, Mom, how are you? I'm fine, dear. How's everything? Everything's fine. How's Dad doing? Dad is fine. Everything is fine, 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 because that's what they're taught to say and do. And someone with dementia doesn't really want to talk about their memory deficit. So they're going to cover up, say everything's fine, until maybe adult son or adult daughter ask a more specific question. Well, what did you do today? Now, that is sort of a benign question, but sometimes people with dementia can't even answer that because they don't really remember what they did earlier in the day, and they're going to make something up. And so you find later in the stages of dementia that this is what we call a cover-up. And a cover-up would be, I did laundry today, I went for a walk, and I read a book. Well, that sounds all very nice and plausible, and it could really happen. But in reality, the adult child or the adult daughter, they don't know if that really happened or not. So they think everything is fine, again, until they come to visit, and they're actually in the presence of mom and dad for an extended period of time, at least long enough to know that everything is not fine. And so these are tips and behavior characteristics that we all want to watch out for in our loved ones, especially in our loved ones that are growing older. Another behavioral characteristic in middle stage is beginning to skip steps in tasks. Now, tasks are very common because we do tasks every day. But do you realize how many steps there is in a normal task? For instance, if we were to say, I'm going to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Well, it sounds easy. You get the bread, you get the peanut butter, you get the jelly, and there you go. In reality, there are probably 30 steps if you break it down step by step by step in how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And for someone that's having cognitive difficulties in sequencing, that's what we call it, going from one step to the next, to the next, to the next, they actually have to figure out where is the bread, where is the peanut butter, and where is the jelly, go and get those items. Then they have to open a drawer, they have to get out a knife, they have to get out a spoon for the jelly, and then they have to lay out the bread, get a plate to put the bread on, and it's very, very detailed. Now, we all do it normally and fast because it's something that we've done. But when people start losing cognitive ability, especially in sequencing, they actually can skip a lot of steps. So you might get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich without the peanut butter. So again, these are just a lot of little tips and characteristics that go with every stage. And another one that we want to be able to look at is at times people appear to be befuddled or confused. And when you're telling somebody something, if you can watch their body language, you can look at the way that they tilt their head or shrug their shoulders, or they're looking at you oddly like they don't really understand, where they're more confused. They're not understanding. They're not receiving the information. It's not that they can't hear you. They can hear you fine. It's just that they're not understanding. Their receptive skills are not working because of the damage that the disease has caused to the brain. So that is the actual stage 3 middle stages. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about stage 4 and 5 and what to expect, and talk a little bit more about Dr. Tam Cummings on untangling Alzheimer's disease. So stay right with us.
Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. The inability to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's, particularly among the family members who care for them. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who care for them. Keeping them safe and secure means never letting your guard down. And even though deep down you know it's time, it hurts to have to ask for help. But it could hurt them even more if you didn't. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. The inability to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's, particularly among the family members who care for them. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you.
In her book, Untangling Alzheimer's. She did a presentation today in West Palm Beach, and I thought it was so impressive that we want to have her on the show, hopefully in the upcoming months. And she's on her way back to Texas right now. And I want to share some of these highlights. I know a lot of you wanted to get to the seminar today and you weren't able to attend. So we want to give you the highlights and give you an opportunity to get one of Dr. Tam Cummings' books later in the program. So we've been talking about the different stages of Alzheimer's. We're up to stage 4, which is called middle stage or moderate dementia. By this time, 4 ounces of brain tissue have been lost. The stage is thought to last 1 to 4 years. And a person in this stage is actually the equivalent of 12 years old. It's interesting. As we age and we're getting, older, our numbers, in age, we're getting older, but our brain is getting younger. And that's what happens with Alzheimer's disease, as we lose abilities and our abilities get less and less and less, which actually make us go backwards as far as abilities, where we are more like a teenager, then more like a child, and then eventually more like an infant. And so at this stage, you're talking about equivalent of 12 years old to adulthood. And there are interesting behavioral characteristics in the middle stage of this moderate dementia. We have memory deficits regarding personal history. So in other words, if you were to ask a person at this stage, how did you meet your spouse? Now, this is something, they should know, but because of the memory loss, they might look at their spouse and say, honey, you tell them. you tell them how we met, because they're not able to retrieve that information any longer out of their file cabinet. And as Dr. Cummings explained, we all have a file cabinet in our brain, and all the information is stored. And when we are trying to retrieve information, there's these little files. Our brain is like a little computer, and we retrieve the information. When the disease process gets to the point where it's destroying certain files, there's no way a person can actually retrieve that information. So again, if you ask someone a question about their personal history, they may have a memory deficit because that actual file may have been destroyed. They have difficulty with immediate recall. For example, what time is my doctor's appointment? This was an example that Dr. Cummings expressed today with some members of the audience, and she said, ask me what time my doctor's appointment is, okay? And we said 3 o'clock. And a few minutes later, what time is my doctor's appointment? 3 o'clock. Now, by the third time you have to repeat it again, you're probably, as a caregiver, getting pretty annoyed at this. And so this is normal repetitive behavior in someone in this middle stage, this moderate stage of Alzheimer's disease. And you, as a caregiver, you're going to have to adjust your behavior and your response because the person with dementia can't adjust theirs. They truly, truly don't remember that you said the doctor's appointment was at 3 o'clock. So they're going to keep asking over and over and over again, and you're just going to get more frustrated unless you can figure out a way to deflect them, redirect them, change the subject, do whatever you can so that you don't get so frustrated and so angry at them that you might lash out, which would be a bad thing for both you and your loved one, because they're going to mirror you. So if you're stressed out and you're angry and you're lashing out, guess what? Your loved one is mirroring you, and they may do the same thing back to you. And that's how arguments get started. So this is very, very common, not remembering, having difficulty with the immediate recall. Also, increased anxiety and frustration over their abilities or loss of abilities. You may see a person in this stage, really upset with themselves because they know they can't remember everything that they should remember. And they may even hold their head and say, gee, something is wrong with me. I should know this. And that causes them to have increased anxiety and frustration over the fact that they can't remember. They might even be a great joke teller in the past, but they're going to mess up all of the punchlines to a joke. So these are little telltale signs. They begin to have stumbles and falls. Then they get into the late stage, which is stage 5. This is moderately severe dementia. It's thought to last 1 to 3 years. By this time, 1/2 to 1 pound, a half a pound to 1 pound of brain tissue is lost, and the person now is equivalent to the age of 12 years old to 8 years old. So now this person has declined, and their ability to function is the same as an 8 to 12-year-old, which means that you probably should not be leaving this person alone. They're not able to have proper good judgment. They're not able to take care of themselves in many situations. They have disorientation to time or to place. They don't know what day it is, the day of the week, the seasons. They might even get mixed up. They may have ability to try to dress themselves, but it's not appropriate dressing. They might choose to layer their clothes. They might put on 3 different sweaters or 2 pairs of pants. They need help with this. So they need assistance now with some of the what we call activities of daily living. Activities of daily living include things such as grooming, bathing, toileting, eating. These are things that we all do on a normal basis by ourselves, but someone with cognitive impairment, they need the assistance. And this is when you're going to find, too, that there's more falls. A lot of people crave sweets over other foods. That's because as the disease progresses, our taste buds change, and they do remember the sweet. And a lot of people just want to eat a lot of candy and cookies, sugary things, which is really not good for them. So Dr. Cummings had a great idea. If you want to get your person to eat protein, like eggs or steak, pour a little honey on it, put some syrup on it, because then they're going to get that sweetness. It's going to taste good to them, and at the same time, they're going to be able to get their proper nutrition and eat the protein that they need for their body. A lot of people do hunting and gathering. This is the hunting and gathering stage where they wander from room to room and they're on a mission, and you don't know what they're looking for, but they're rummaging and they're picking up things and they're changing positions of things and they're moving things. And so you may have a problem where you're looking for something and your loved one has moved it all over the house or hidden it, and you're not going to be able to find that. So that is probably something you may have experienced if your loved one is in the stage 5 or moderately severe dementia. They wander a lot. They're looking for a way out. Now, this is what we call purposeful wandering. A person doesn't just decide to walk out the door for no reason. They have a purpose. It's purposeful wandering, which means they're thinking, time to go to work. I got to go. I got to get out. I've got to go to work. I've got to go pick up my kids. A lot of mothers, had a certain time of day where they knew they had to be at the school to pick up their children. And this is because they're living in the past and they're thinking of these things. All of a sudden, they have a need to go, and they're very anxious about making sure the children are picked up and not left alone. Or a gentleman may be very anxious about making sure he gets to work to take care of his business. And this is why you see a lot of exit seeking, only because they have a purpose and they are going out the door to do something that they feel they need to do. So these are some of the things in early stage, or what they call early stage 5, late stage, early to late stage 5 dementia. And let's get into right now stage 6, which is severe dementia. By this time, 1 to 1.5 pounds of the brain tissue is lost. A person is equivalent to a 2-year-old up to a 4-year-old. And this stage is thought to last approximately 1 to 3 years. We have major behavioral characteristics in stage 6. A person in stage 6 is repetitive in motion or speech or memory, which means that they're going to repeat a lot more. They may have certain motions that they repeat, especially with their hands. They're very tactile. They like to hold on to things and rub things together. And if you have a person you see doing that with their hands, give them something to hold on to. Give them something simple that they can do. They may be in constant motion and walking for hours even. I remember a gentleman many, many years ago that we had at our community that walked constantly. And I think he was there for at least 5 years, and I never, ever, ever saw the man sit down. He was in constant motion. He was driven. His brain said, we need to go, go, go. And the only time that he stopped was at night when he actually went to bed. Sometimes they won't wear appropriate clothing. Sometimes they remove their clothing inappropriately. This is a stage that you see a lot of the negative behaviors. Maybe bowel incontinence begins. They can't even complete a 2-stage command, such as, pick up a piece of paper and fold it. And this goes, again, to those simple commands. So as the disease progresses, we have to be more cognizant of what we're asking a person to do, because they can't process anything that's complicated. So a 1-sentence command, is something that is easier. You add a 2-sentence to it, it's harder, and so on and so forth. So you have to give a person time and give them a chance to understand what you're asking, and give them time to do that. Because one of the worst things you can do for a person with dementia is to actually try to rush them. They do not like to be rushed. They need their own time, and they need to be able to have that time to process. Now we get into stage 7, which is the last stage, which is the last stage in this dementia behavioral assessment tool that Dr. Cummings provided. This is very severe dementia. 1.5 to 2 pounds of our brain tissue is lost. Our brain is only about 3 pounds in weight. So at the last stage, we've lost at least half or more of our brain tissue. This is something that causes a person to become like a 2-year-old all the way to infant stages. This is the last stage, thought to last 1 to 2 years. And in this stage, there's practically no speech at all. If there is some speech, it's actually some unintelligible word sounds or some grunting noises. They've lost the ability to actually speak. They cannot feed themselves. If they do what we call squirreling their food, where they stuff the food in their mouth and they have big pockets of food, which can cause them to choke. They're at a high risk of choking because of that. And at this stage, they probably need to be fed, which, by the way, takes about an hour to feed a person with Alzheimer's because, again, you have to give them proper time to chew the food, to swallow it, to process it. And it doesn't lend itself to no fast food in dementia care, not the kind that you eat, but the way that you do it. So no fast feeding. They're sometimes unable to sit up independently or even to hold their head up. And at this stage, you'll see a lot of people with their head down to their chin to their chest, and that's because they have no ability to put their head up and hold that head up like they did earlier because of the mass deterioration of the brain at this stage. They require total care. They sometimes curl their hands, their legs pull up. At the very late stages, they become sometimes in a fetal position. They spend a majority of their day sleeping, and they have extreme weight loss. And the loss of ability to smile is an indication that death is near. And that is a horrible thing to think of, but it's important for caregivers to realize the process. And just because you feel so bad for your loved one and you feel guilty that maybe you're not doing enough or you're not, being enough, that is normal for a caregiver to feel guilty, but it's not your fault. And we all do the best that we can. And it's not even bad that you would to think, gee, I wish my loved one would go to sleep and not wake up because I hate to see them suffer this way. And Dr. Cummings would tell you that's not bad. That's just being human. We all have feelings, and it's just human not to want to see our loved ones suffer. And so these are very important things to realize as time goes on, because you don't want to be blindsided as far as what's going to be happening next. Now, we are able to provide this tool, this assessment tool to you. This is a wonderful tool. It's called the staging tool, the behavioral assessment tool for different stages, and that you can get this actually free by calling the Arden Courts toll-free number, which is 888-478-2410, and ask them for this assessment tool. Tell them that you heard about it on the Caregiver Solutions info show. Also, while you're at it, ask them for Untangling Alzheimer's by Dr. Tam Cummings. And this book is a wonderful book for you. We would love to provide it to you free of charge so you can have it and learn all about untangling Alzheimer's disease. And we want to give it to you as a complimentary tool to help you. We will be back next week, same time, same place. Don't forget, in the meantime, give someone a hug because they need it, and so do you. Give us a call, email me. I'm so glad that you joined us today. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily